Righty-ho, welcome to a slightly updated version. We actually downloaded from the Fenix Discord server a new version of their little app that runs in the background, and that's given me quite a boost actually. I've turned over to CPU rendering and I'm getting about 10 to 15 frames per second more. On the ground it's less noticeable, probably in the kind of 5 or 6 frames per second region, so we're going from 25 to 30 at places like Boston, and I took off at San Francisco with 30 frames per second. It went down to 25 or so on takeoff, and then during the entire cruise we've been pushing 40, 50 plus, which is pretty good. We flew from San Francisco over LA. LA saw a slight drop in frames per second, as you'd expect, because it's a massive photogrammetry area. There's a huge amount of scenery going on there as well. We've got one of the Asobo handcrafted airports, which usually means hand performance reducing aircraft. We're just coming in now over to an overcast layer, which Flight Simulator seems to be finally rendering relatively nicely, in towards San Diego. So we're going to be flying the RNAV Zulu approach for runway 27. We've got the performance up here, so you can see how the whole thing's working. We've got the CPU load, GPU load as the top one, and then we've got the clock speeds there, and the overall frames per second is on the bottom. So looking at San Diego's meta, we've got variable winds, 3 knots, 10 miles visibility, overcast at 1,900 of the airport. So we're going to expect to be in cloud until about 6 mile final. Temperature 16, and the altimeter's a bit high pressure, that's okay. So we're above ISA conditions by 1 degree Celsius, so nothing really to be worried about there. It's not like our altimeter's going to be ridiculously off, less than 4%, it's 0.04%. Sorry, 0.4% per 10 degrees, sorry, per degree above ISA conditions. So, no worries about the true altimeters reading wrongly, or we're going to have a real problem with the deviation from true altitude due to ISA deviation. We're coming in now on a nicely programmed FMS descent. We should be hitting X-Mans at 7,000, Clommen at 6,000, and then around for the RNAV approach there. It's looking like a 15 mile final, so it's going to be quite a long kind of video, I suppose. But we'll kind of run through what's actually happening in the aircraft. We're below 10,000 feet now, so seatbelt signs on, landing lights on, taxi lights to take off, and runway turn-off lights are also going on. Nav is on system 1. We just keep that there where it was. This is now all off. All the INSs are okay. Let's check the accuracy, because we need to check that for RNAV. Accuracy is 0.03, and we'll require 0.3, so that's okay. All the RNAVs are reading within 0.5 of each other, which is good. That could well just be due to the position of the wings, so that's fair enough for where they are located on the plane. Everything up here is looking okay. Down here we've got weather radar doesn't actually work yet, which is a shame, but hopefully that will be included very shortly. Got the radio set up to Unicom. We've got our descent here, flight plan on the left. Let's put this over to the missed approach procedure. 32 frames per second now as we hit the clouds, 35 or so, you can see the performance. Yeah, 38 frames per second is not bad, coming through the clouds. So we're about to enter the cloud layers. Let's see what cool things that provides. We've got 200 knots on the FMS. It's more or less idle throttle. We've got a little bit of gas on just to keep it above 220. Landing stuff's already calculated. Let's do KSAN 27 into our bearing distance. Go, it's 4 miles to our right hand side, 200 degrees, so we're roughly a beam the wrong way. Okay, then we can start descending into the clouds. So let's see how that goes. Frames per second holding steady at the moment. Let's see what happens as we go through. A drop of about 3 frames per second, but more or less steady actually. Okay, 6,000 feet and speed restriction 210 knots. Aircraft's vectors are just keeping to hold that. We've programmed 3,000 and then we'll engage final lap once we're at the right altitude for that. The aircraft should keep us going at a constant rate of descent, so that once we actually hit Clom, we get to the next waypoint, the rate of descent doesn't need to vastly increase. So you can see that we're already in a descent and we're just going to increase the rate slightly there. We're now in cloud, so just checking the temperature. We've got 26 degrees Celsius outside, which is not a concern for icing, so we'll just keep the ice off for now. Still got the window heat on, as we always do. Just going in and out of the clouds now. We're just going to descend down to, what's it, 5.2 is our next restriction, and then we've got 4.8, 3.7, 3.2, and then at that point I can actually engage the final lap. Landing system stays off the RNAV. Johnny sneezes because hay fever. Apparently Innsbruck City Council have been planting male-dominated trees, which basically produce a heck ton of pollen, so it's absolutely brutal. Once we hit 4.8, it should just keep descending. We're on a constant descent approach, more or less. We could actually now engage. There you go, at nav. Final is armed, so I don't actually know where that's going to occur, but at some point, hopefully. We should now start descending into the cloud layer properly, so it's going to get a bit more dark. We're going to lose the sun. Okay, I am ready for performance. Approach phase and confirm. There we go. Final app is now engaged, and basically it flies this entire course as if it was a ILS, except it's an ILS with curves in it, which is pretty cool. So we're currently engaged final app. You can see we've got lateral and vertical deviation markers there, and we're following the track of the RNP points. So GPS points, the plane follows them. We've got sufficient accuracy to fly the approach. We're established on final lap, so I can set the missed approach altitude, so let's just check what that is. If we go into the charts here, RNP Zulu 27, it says if we go through, the minimum safe is 5,400, given that we've got IFR conditions. We will set that as we'll set 6,000 as our missed approach. Frames just dropping down slightly as we turn final, coming in over San Diego. Obviously that scenery is loading up, so we've got 30 frames per second. That's going to drop down probably quite significantly. I'm expecting 20 on final. That was what I was previously getting, so if there's anything better than about 20, then we're pretty good. Still relatively smooth looking around the cockpit. That's a Masovo problem more than anything. Okay, looking like 10 miles to go. Let's set flaps 1. We may lose some accuracy as we set flaps layers.
2,500.
Great. Gear down. Spoilers on. We've got brake set to medium. That's going to give us a long rollout, but we're going to be flying no auto thrusters. Minimums today are, I think, 600 and something feet. 617 feet above sea level, which is about 600 feet above airport level. So that's going to be around for a 2-mile final. Hopefully we'll pop out of the cloud in about 300-400 feet. Flaps 2 going in. It's a steeper descent. We've got about 1100 at the moment. San Diego traffic, Delta 2334, inbound RNAV approach runway 27, 5 miles. Flaps 3 going in. Still not visible. We're 1700 above, so the minimum's obviously cloud being scattered. 1800 is not quite correct, although they can just about start seeing the ground. Flaps full. Now we're just hoping that the RNAV pays off and we actually get close enough to the runway to declare visual, but that should be no problem. 26 frames per second now on final approach, a bit more laggy, but still about 5 or 6 frames per second higher than the old Fenix App. Still not quite visual with the runway. We've got 500 feet to go before minimums. So I'm not overly concerned. I'm just starting to see something popping up ahead. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I can't positively identify it yet, so we won't turn off the autopilot. San Diego is a sketchy approach. It's a steep one. So it could well be that we are... Okay, I'm visual with the beginning lights of the runway. We're coming in over a hill now. Let's just show what this looks like for the passengers. I'm going to keep the autopilot engaged because this is a wonderful view of San Diego. It's almost real, isn't it? Look at that. Okay, let's go. 400 feet. Checked. Oh god. Those power lines need checking. Autopilot's off. The power lines I don't care about. I actually think I need to remove that mod. I've spoken with the developer about it. About changing the height of any pylons within the vicinity of an airfield, because you get some high power lines.
100.
100 feet checked.
50, 40, 30, 10, 5.
Touchdown. Idle reverse. Full reverse. Auto brakes. Decel. knots. That flare was a bit ballsed up. I didn't turn off the auto thrust in time. Should have actually been manually flying at that point, so we can adjust the auto thrust. Let's vacate left. So yeah, as expected, that was a long rollout because I did deliberately take a longer landing run. There we go, set flap 0. Let's taxi off. 25 frames per second on the ground, it's not bad, could be better. But as usual, we're in a photogrammetry area with a default scenery. These always seem to be somehow worse than handcrafted. Okay, let's take this stand here. In reality, we should also put the APU on, but actually let's do it. Master switch and on. Okay, there we go, parking brake set. APU is still waiting to come available, so we'll leave it on for now. Runway turn off, lights off. Wait for the APU availability. Come on. 20 frames per second now, so it is still a degradation. There it is, it's available, so engine's off, engine 1 off, engine 2 off, beacon off, seatbelt signs off, backups 25 frames per second, as we turn off some of the systems. We'll start deboarding, so that means hopefully the jetway will come over here. Please. There we go, jetway does it automatically. I would like them to engage some kind of integration with push throttle back because it's a much better system, I find. We need to report something. Atsu AOC, we've got a message. Arrival message, arrived at 14 Zulu. Actual time of arrival, so let's check that against our schedules. We are 15 minutes early, we also departed 5 minutes early, so that's fine. Lovely. Right, that's that. So you see 29 frames per second. When you're looking around at airports, it is kind of a bit laggy. You can see dropping down to 19. So hopefully this will all get improved over time. But we are also in the high density photogrammetry scenery, so let's kind of keep it worse. I'd only try a flight from London to Edinburgh, and frames per second would rebound for the entire flight, just to make a comparison there. So there you go. Good things in the line, hopefully. Hopefully this will be getting better as time goes on.